Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 17th of October 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Well, mixed weather reports across UK today. We've got everything really. We've got people saying it's cloudy, breezy, chilly and cold. We've got some sun in Norfolk. So overall, a pretty mixed bag. And that's it.
Yemen. Let's talk about Yemen. There's been a joint statement issued yesterday by the UK, US, Saudi Arabian and UAE governments. They were all meeting in London. And the United Nations Special Envoy for Yemen was there. And they called on all Yemeni parties to work determinedly with the UN Special Envoy in accordance with the GCC initiative, as it's described, the National Dialogue Outcomes and relevant UN Security Council resolutions. We've discussed those in the past and whether they're legitimate or not. But the key thing that really sort of got me, Brian, about this statement was unilateral steps, they say, including those actions in Sana'a to form political institutions, are incompatible with a peaceful resolution and will not be granted legitimacy. So in Yemen at the moment, there are institutions being established by the Lebanese government, but because they're not the Western-backed institutions, they will not be granted legitimacy.
Yeah, I'm smiling while you're telling me this, Mike, because the whole game is becoming so obvious now. There is a cabal running. It is designed to break down nation states. Of course, Britain is heavily embedded in it. And if these countries don't play, well, it's Theresa May's game now, isn't it? If they don't play Theresa May's games, then you can expect your country to be ripped apart.
And here is another key statement. The ministers expressed concern about the economic situation, including the independence of the central bank.
Good.
Right.
We've got to the point where the news becomes darker and darker and more serious, and we're reduced to laughter because the reports coming out in the mainstream press are simply so childish.
Well, actually, that's a government press release, so that's
well, okay. I got that one wrong, but same logic.
It's spectacular. Okay, but in the meantime, Tobias Ellwood, he's carefully considering the Saudi investigation report into the bombing of the funeral a week or so ago, just over a week ago, and he's saying because of non-compliance in coalition rules of engagements and procedures and the issuing of this is what the Saudis are saying, because of non-compliance with coalition rules of engagement and procedures and the issuing of incorrect information, a coalition aircraft wrongly targeted the location, resulting in civilian deaths and injuries. More than 6,700 people have been killed since the coalition, as it's described, first intervened. And the Joint Investigations Action Team, which was investigating the latest atrocity, made up of 14 military and legal experts from members of the Saudi-led coalition. So they're investigating themselves. They said the intelligence was supplied by a body affiliated to the Yemeni Chief of Staff. So there you go.
Yeah,
was that a British body?
Mike, I really don't know what to say anymore because it's so obvious what's going on here, isn't it? And the lies are pouring out of the British government by whatever means, whether it's an official announcement or, of course, it's our friendly propaganda corporation, the BBC.
Perfect, because that's exactly what I want to talk about with regard to Mosul, because last week, of course, with the discussion on the BBC about Syria and about Aleppo, the BBC, it has to be said, were pretty much close to being apoplectic about the fact that ISIS was about to be destroyed in eastern Aleppo. And of course, their excuse for that was that eastern Aleppo contains lots and lots of civilians. And how could Russia possibly determine who to bomb whenever we've got civilians and ISIS mixed up together? The hypocrisy here is just absolutely, it's breathtaking. Because the BBC this morning was talking about Mosul, and the mainstream media in general talking about Mosul. The Battle of Mosul takes place. It has begun. And of course, ISIS in Mosul has had about 2-3 weeks to get used to the idea that there was a battle about to take place. They've been able to get themselves out if they felt like it. But they are saying nothing about the fact that Western-backed Iraqi coalition forces are about to take Mosul. There are 1 million people in this city that are about to be displaced if they survive. But that's perfectly all right for us to do that, to bomb ISIS. I'm not saying we shouldn't be bombing ISIS, not for 1 second. I'm talking about the hypocrisy of the media coverage on this, and the fact that it's quite all right for us to bomb ISIS in Mosul, no matter the consequence for the civilians there, but it's not all right for the Russians to do the same in eastern Aleppo.
Yeah, well, we're watching theatre, Mike, at the end of the day, utter theatre, while the globalist agenda is pushed. And of course, we see very little of what's been happening in Iraq over the past months and years, just constant bloodshed ever since the West got involved.
Yep. Sorry, in the meantime, Tunisia, here it is on the map. Between Algeria and Libya. So UK armed forces are going to provide training to Tunisian forces to help stem the threat posed by ISIS there, according to Michael Fallon. He has announced today short-term training team of around 40 UK personnel have arrived in the country, and they will engage in operational planning, intelligence and surveillance, and on mobile patrolling, which will help Tunisia counter illegal cross-border movement, particularly from neighbouring Libya. They're sending the 4th Infantry Brigade out, who they seem to do this kind of foreign training. What did Michael Fallon have to say? We're determined to support our Tunisian allies to defend against Daesh terrorists. Our training will help Tunisian forces strengthen their border security and stop the spread of Daesh along the coast. Daesh.
Well,
yes.
I just want to say this is complete and utter nonsense, Mike. The idea that 40 people are going to go into Tunisia and they're going to train people in order to stop the movement of people across the whole of the North African coast. This is fantasy land. Of course, what they're really going in to do is to help train and arm people who are going to become insurgents. And they are then, we can have Michael Fallon then standing up and saying, oh, well, it's terrible. We've now got the spread of ISIS into a wider area in North Africa. It seems at the moment that British special forces are simply the paid mercenaries of the cabinet of the British government. There's no debate in Westminster as to whether these people are going to go into nation states and cause trouble. We simply get a statement. Well, it was by David Cameron originally. I noticed since Theresa May's come into post that they don't let her speak on military matters. We bring Mr. Fallon forward.
Yes.
So presumably Theresa's not quite a safe pair of hands when it's about the overseas killing. You bring in Michael Fallon, who's an expert in health clubs, is it? I think so. Okay. Something along those lines. But every country we now see has got 20 or 30 or 40 British Special Forces. So apparently British Special Forces now number tens of thousands of military personnel. Well, of course they don't. So who's being used here? Mercenaries? Question.
Indeed.
Well, as the chaos and the bloodshed unfolds with UK and the USA at the centre, we'd just like to draw your attention to this man, Trey Gowdy. There are some really astonishing YouTube clips of this man interrogating people as part of the Senate committee investigation into Hillary Clinton and Benghazi, and of course the loss of those tens of thousands of classified US emails. But what is so powerful about this man is he is there, he is confident, his questions go to the heart of the matter. And this is just one of the clips where he's speaking to the media team, and then really he doesn't know what else to say. It's a bit like UK column news. You get to the point, what else can you say? But what is he pointing out? He's pointing out lies, corruption, criminality, cover-ups at the highest levels of the US state. And what are they covering up? They're covering up not just emails, they are covering up the death of United States diplomatic people who were killed in the Benghazi attacks. We've got weapons being shipped. We've got mercenaries being used in the country. And it's taken this man single-handedly really to get this information out into the public. So if you haven't had a look at this man speaking on YouTube, just go on, Google his name, and you will find plenty of very short clips. Some of them are only about 6 or 7 minutes long. There are some much longer ones, but listen to what is being exposed at the heart of the United States government: utter and complete criminality and corruption. We'd just like to thank the person who highlighted this YouTube clip. Now, this is going back to 2013, but it's very interesting watching it with what has transpired in the last couple of years to do with Syria and relations with the US and Russia. But basically, Putin is being asked this question: do you think we have fundamental ideological differences that prevent us, as the Russians, from reaching an understanding on the international arena? But principally, that lady's comments are focused towards America. And Putin is there on his own in front of the cameras. And he says, but in our understanding as a Russian person, we have a different mission. It's something that stretches beyond the horizon. And what he does very, very clinically is focuses people on what America is really about. And he starts by saying, well, let's consider how America came into being. People principally there for their own interests. They have to create a democracy, but they did it on the back of killing we don't know how many million indigenous people. And then he says, and where does that eventually take them? Well, they dropped 2 nuclear bombs on a country which was clearly already defeated. And he does point a finger at Russia. He says, of course, if we have a look at the brutality of Stalin, we've learned a lot about that. He says, would Stalin have dropped a nuclear bomb during the Second World War, i.e. pre-1945? He says, yes, I think he would have done that in order to have stopped the conflict in Europe. Would he have done it after 1945? I think the answer to that is no. Now, have a look at those 2 video clips and just get an impression of what is really going on in the US versus what Putin is actually having to say.
So if you want to find that, it's called Putin on Ideology, Difference Between Americans and Russians. Now, just before we move on to something related, just a bit of late-breaking news is that RT in the UK have had their bank accounts frozen by the NatWest Bank. We'll see what happens with that, but clearly a further attack on RT in this country.
Because obviously what they're putting out is beginning to hurt the cabal.
Yeah. So Joe Biden then, this, it gets a bit ridiculous. Joe Biden said, talking about cyber attacks and cyber crime. And of course, we've seen a lot of stuff in the media over the last number of weeks about all the cyber attacks on the United States coming from Russia, Russia this, Russia that. I haven't seen any evidence for it, but these are the claims. Joe Biden went a step further at the weekend. Yesterday, he said, we're sending a message. We have the capacity to do it. It will be at a time of our choosing and under the circumstances that have the greatest impact. But he basically said, we are going to attack Russia using these types of methods. Well, as you might expect, the Russians haven't taken that too kindly. The Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, said yesterday, the fact is US unpredictability and aggression keep growing. And such threats against Moscow and our country's leadership are unprecedented because the threat is being announced at the level of the vice president. It is really demonstrating how, I can't even think of the right word to describe, they are off their heads at the moment.
Well, I think what we're seeing, Mike, is that the US administration, which is clearly criminal cabal-led, is now out of control. So you've got people speaking out, it's not approved policy, it's never been discussed or debated. They're simply spewing out rhetoric which is in their heads. I think America is in an extremely dangerous position at the moment. But of course, these people with this rhetoric are the people who are ultimately giving the orders to the US armed forces. And I think it's one of the attributes of American armed forces. They get the order, they're going to do the job. It's it's very serious stuff.
Absolutely. And those comments then sort of reinforced from Konstantin Kosachev. He is head of the Federation Council Committee on the Russian Federation's Council Committee on International Affairs. And he was speaking on Russian TV yesterday, again saying, this is a direct threat of the use of force by the USA, an unprecedented event. Well, another unprecedented event, perhaps you can comment on this, Brian, were 5 ships, the carrier group Admiral Kuznetsov, along with the cruiser Pyotr Veliki, I do apologize for the pronunciation, 2 destroyers, an unspecified number of supply vessels. They left a Russian port yesterday. They're heading around Britain, some direction. There's some talk they're going to attempt to pass through the Channel. But what was mildly amusing about these reports was the Telegraph had to admit that, unfortunately, we don't have enough of a navy left to actually escort these ships as they travel around the UK, because in order to do so, we would have to divert ships from other patrols and other activities. And this carrier group heading off to the Mediterranean to play there. So,
but this is interesting stuff, Mike. The first thing to say, of course, is that this, we'll call it a carrier group, is very, very minor, extremely minor compared to the power of a United States carrier battle group. The difference is astonishing. But this is basically another display. I would guess that the Russians are going to say, well, we're going to carry on moving military equipment around. But you've just made the key point, of course, that the Royal Navy is not in a position now to deal with any true Russian threats, if we believe that scenario, because, of course, David Cameron has utterly destroyed the Royal Navy and is well on his way to destroying the Army and the Air Force as well. This whole decline of British military power, we're not looking at the topic, should we have these weapon systems? We're looking at the politics being played out. But clearly the Tory agenda, continued by Fallon, is to destroy the inherent structure of the British military. So on one hand, we're to be terrified the Russians are going to come and murder us in our beds. On the other hand, the British government is cutting military forces who are supposed to defend us. So there's theatre here somewhere. What's happening doesn't stack up. I'm hoping that we'll have David Ellis from Strategic Defence Initiatives with us tomorrow. And I believe he's got some really excellent updates on what's now starting to happen amongst senior British military personnel retired in the London area.
Right.
What can we do about all of this? Well, press the right button. There we are. First of all, to say north of the border, don't forget on Wednesday, the 26th of October, we've got Highland investigation starting in the Royal Highland Hotel. This is part of the excellent work of David Scott from Northern Exposure, but it's really starting to get Scottish people to come together in order to actually have a look at what their institutions are really doing around them. And of course, the Highland Council is very much under the spotlight at the moment for its particular work. South of the border, 19th of November, the Winchester Conference. Now we're going to start to release details of the speakers, but I'm going to say today that we're absolutely delighted to have secured Vanessa Beeley, who's going to be there, and she will be speaking on the subject of Syria. How does that fit with the Constitution? Well, it's very easy. And that is, of course, that unless we had a breakdown of our constitution in UK, there's no way we could be progressing unlawful overseas wars. So if you think of the destruction that's been unleashed on Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and now Syria and Yemen, all of this is down to the breakdown of the constitutional structure in UK, and that's something that's been deliberately engineered. Across England, we are encouraging groups to get together. This was Theo's latest excellent picture, encouraging people in the Plymouth area to come together in order to talk matters constitutional and to understand more of our history. And we're saying to everybody, don't just sit at home emailing and getting more and more worried. It's time to actually get away from the electronic communication and sit down with real people and talk and chat and have some laughter, because it's this action that conquers fear. So if you don't know what to do, take a couple of people out for a drink or a cup of coffee and start to talk about what's happening in the country. And
you've been out with the spray cans again, Brian?
I absolutely haven't. Of course, we could not condone this sort of thing, but somebody sent in to us this graphic. The UK columns appeared on a garage door, but I was very interested that it was support the UK column before it's too late. So whoever the spray can operators were, they clearly understood that things are getting very serious. And thank you very much to whoever it was for the confidence, but I'm not suggesting anybody should be spraying public property or private property for that matter. Prime Minister's car? No, definitely not. Big thank you to the Penzance Truth Group for their excellent weekend. On Saturday, it really was a fascinating day, taking a very in-depth look at the NHS. And I'd like to say that Patrick Quanton's analysis of some of the more fraudulent aspects of the medical system in the UK was really excellent. And what's the outcome from the day? We are going to look at putting a dedicated event on, speaking with speakers talking about the NHS and Britain's care system, if there is one, that is. Well, let's have a look at this headline. This is where we can start to show the seriousness of what's going on in Britain. And we've got a Mail headline that a grandmother of 71 years has been thrown in jail, and she's been given a 6-month jail sentence because she refused to move a man who's 80 from his position in a care home in Portugal. And what is significant in this case is that the Court of Protection, who sentenced the grandmother, has been hiding the details of the sentencing for 2 months. So we've got a judge-administered court simply deciding on the basis of what Devon County Social Services says, that this man needed to be shipped back from a home in Portugal where he's completely happy, and he needs to be put under the control of Devon Adult Services. They try and blame the action on the Court of Protection. Well, of course, it takes a judge to make the decision, and although the public were in the court, no jury was present, so one man sentences a woman to prison, and this is Justice Newton. He said, "I acknowledge that she has deeply held sincere beliefs as to the best interests of the gentleman, who can't be named, and is genuinely concerned about his welfare, but I've reluctantly concluded that I'm left with no alternative but to pass a sentence of imprisonment. However much I've made it perfectly clear that I do not wish to do so." So these are weasel words by a judge sitting in a court with no jury present. And of course, the judge is simply taking the word of Devon Social Services, and they say, this man is not safe with the woman who's cared for him for very many years. He needs to come back in under our control.
This is because the care home won't release the guy without a signature, and her signature is required. She's refusing to give it.
Yes, basically the care home in Portugal says unless the lady gives her signature to the documentation, they won't release the gentleman. The Daily Mail doesn't know the name of the gentleman. They don't know a lot of details of the case because, of course, Court of Protection is secret court material. This is just like the family courts. But as you'll see in a minute, the point we're making here, one judge in a court with no jury sentences a woman to prison on the evidence of Devon County Adult Care Services. And where's the proper judicial process? Non-existent.
So do we know, is there property involved in this?
We don't, but we will have a little discussion on the property aspect in a minute. Let's just have a look at how Devon functions. They're not alone. I just went and had a look at some of their website. What is this, Mike? This is cartoon childish stuff, which is apparently about adult care. I don't get a warm feeling about the elderly lady there that's looking down and looking very troubled. And the face looking at her, I don't think is a very kind face. But something happening in local authorities where childish material is put up as if to cover up what's really happening in very serious areas. Only one comment with regard to the imprisonment of the lady 71 from Devon. The comment came from Devon Council. So apparently Devon County Council, called Devon Council in the Mail, the council speaks, Mike.
Yeah.
I thought maybe this lady would be the lady that was speaking, Jenny Stevens. She's head of adult care and health, and she gets paid a mere £131,295 per year. Any decision regarding where a vulnerable adult should live is entirely a matter for the Court of Protection. This is disingenuous because, of course, the court responded to material that the council put in the first place. And if we just emphasise this childish language, which I think is very significant, this is another part of the Devon County website. Let's bring it in. This is to do with social workers. So it's to do with child protection, unbelievably serious thing, but it's made into a little game, a visual game. So we've got 684 children in care. We've got another 450 children subject to child protection plans on the roadway. And then they're gleefully saying we're getting ready to have 23,000 people with dementia by 2026.
There's a cash cow, if ever there was one.
There's a cash cow. So to answer your question, Mike, let's have a look at what's happening here. Of course, the state can now simply take children with no evidence or crime committed by the parents. The state simply comes along and says, we're going to take your children, and if you don't like it, well, you can disappear. We've got people like Len Lawrence, poisoned with poisonous air in aircraft. He tries to expose what's happening, and he's sectioned and gets his assets stolen by the very same Court of Protection. So the British state can take your children, it can take your assets. Sorry, this should say Tom Crawford. That's my mistake. It should say Tom Crawford loses his home to corrupt banks, bailiffs and courts. So we've got the same system able to take your house as well. And then we've got the article we've just shown where, of course, they can now come along. We're assuming that the gentleman is the father of this lady, but we're not able to know because it's a secret court case. So many people would say, oh, this is just a mistake, it's a cock-up. The evidence for us is overwhelming that we've got orchestrated criminal conspiracy and corruption at work within the UK.
Good news, Brian.
Good.
Because Eric Pickles has been reappointed as anti-corruption champion.
Well, that is truly wonderful news. I mean, I think as the man who said he's an unlikely revolutionary, he's the best man to get stuck into the corruption.
Absolutely. He's also, by the way, Special Envoy for Post-Holocaust Issues, but he has been reappointed anti-corruption champion, and he was giving a speech a day or two ago to the Anti-Bribery and Corruption Forum. He said that now, as you may have noticed, the Prime Minister is particularly focused on tackling economic crime. Did you know that?
I haven't seen any evidence of that at all, Mike.
Well, it gets better. He said, as the Prime Minister said at our party conference today, and he's quoting the Prime Minister, today too many people in positions of power behave as though they have more in common with international elites, with the people down the road, the people that employ, the people they pass in the street. And she said, if you're a tax dodger, we're coming after you. If you're an accountant, a financial advisor, or a middleman who helps people to avoid what they owe to society, we're coming after you too. An economy that works for everyone is one where everyone plays by the same rules. Now, there's one particular group that she didn't mention at all in that little speech she gave at the Tory party conference. You think who that was? The bankers?
Well,
not mentioned at all.
No, the World Bank is working for our best interest, Mike. I've seen it repeatedly.
Absolutely. So if we put Eric back on there a second, he went on to say, so while there may have been considerable political upheaval since the London Anti-Corruption Summit in May, make no mistake, this government is absolutely committed to tackling corruption, money laundering and economic crime, working in partnership with the city and British business to identify risks, raise standards and promote a level playing field globally. Brilliant. Well, at roughly the same time he was making that speech, the Criminal Finances Bill 2016-2017 was brought in. This bill has 4 key themes: enhancing the UK's law enforcement response, strengthening a relationship between public and private sectors, improving capability to recover the proceeds of crime, including from international corruption, combating terrorist financing. And this is the key point, because the improving our capability to recover proceeds of crime, Brian, what this does is put another string in the bow to the ones you've just mentioned, because this allows the government, if it passes, to remove assets from people that have not been committed, have not been prosecuted and convicted of any offence, but are merely suspected of having committed some kind of offence. So they can come and take your house, they can take your jewellery from a safety deposit box, they can do what they like, take whatever assets they like, if they think that perhaps you gain those items through.
So this is thought crime. This is thought crime now coming in.
Well, and it's a complete breakdown of the rule of law, because there's no requirement to have a prosecution and for somebody to be found guilty. Therefore, the relationship again changes between the individual and the state. There's no presumption of innocence. There's a presumption of guilt. And therefore, you have, if they come along to you and say, this house, where did you get it? Where did you get the money for this house? You've got to provide evidence, or you have the house taken from you. There's no due process. And, there's perhaps something to be said about people getting away with buying property through criminal actions. But as far as I can see, the main criminal actions increasingly are from the City of London and from government institutions that are just stealing property from people. But Ben Wallace, MP, he said, this legislation will ensure the UK is taking a world leading role in cracking down on corruption.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And getting back to Pickles then, he said, furthermore, the government is supporting international efforts to identify and overcome barriers to information sharing. So actually, what we're seeing is that this is one of the key aspects of this whole, it's come out of the Panama Papers, the whole tax avoidance thing. This is part of the global governance infrastructure that they're building at the moment, and a pretty key part of it. But the fact that they reckon they can just take people's property without any kind of due process, I think should be a cause for concern.
Huge concern is the answer.
No,
I was going to say, here they are.
Well, finance. Right. This is Otmar Issing, and he is the chief economist, or he was the chief economist of the European Central Bank. He was one of the architects of the euro, and he's been pretty outspoken in the last few days. Originally on Central Banking blog here on why the euro house of cards is set to collapse. He's warning that the European Central Bank and the euro, they're going to try and get through this particular crisis, but that can't happen. He says they can't make it. He then was speaking to Ambrose Evans-Pritchard in the Telegraph yesterday and saying more of the same, really. The Stability and Growth Pact has more or less failed. Market discipline has done away with has been done away with by ECB interventions. He's basically saying it's ridiculous to suggest that there's no bailout, because bailouts are happening every single day. And he particularly singled out what happened to Greece. He said that Greece should have been thrown out of the euro, given generous support once it restored the drachma. But the sort of strategy that the banks have taken and the central banks have taken and governments have taken is a recipe for disaster.
But these are the people we should trust. The bankers are the people we should trust.
Always.
Because they're looking after our best interests. Interestingly, at the weekend, there were a number of people who seemed to be particularly well informed, saying that we should be watching out for whatever's going to happen with Deutsche Bank tomorrow. So not exactly sure what that means, but What one gentleman was saying was that information he was getting from friends in Germany were that people are now very sure that something untoward is going to happen with Deutsche Bank. Well, the people who control the purse strings are the people saying there's no money for proper health care. And this was part of the drive for our talk in Penzance. So I've just brought up a few of the items we covered because they're very relevant for general news. This was the cutting edge, a new thinking for a new era. I think you found this one originally, Mike, but pretty brutal stuff. This is to do with procurement, the NHS Alliance. So Gary Streeter, Conservative MP for West Devon, says it's not true that the Conservatives are privatising the NHS. He lives in his own reality. Truth is whatever you believe. But this in front of us is the absolute proof of the privatisation. And why would you have razor blades in the same image as people's eyes for something to do with the NHS, Mike?
It's pretty nasty.
It's very, very nasty stuff. Now, if anybody thinks that UK column makes up subjects, let's choose one, NHS towards 1 million change agents. And here's the document. And what does it say? It says it's NHS modernisation agency. There's the title, Towards 1 Million Change Agents, a review of the social movements literature, implications for large-scale change in the NHS. And that large-scale change is privatisation. I'm just going to put the contents on screen so that you can get an idea for it. But it's towards a theory of motivation for large system change in healthcare. These people are spending millions on the system to completely transform the NHS into a profit centre. This is part of the executive summary. They're going to explore social movements as a new way of thinking about large-scale systems. They're going to assess the potential contribution of applying this new perspective to NHS improvement. Good hypnotic speak here, Mike. To enrich and extend NHS thinking in relation to large-scale system-wide change and begin to establish research and evidence base to support the emergence of an improvement movement. We'll show you what that research is doing. If you want to freeze the screen, you can have a little look at a bit more text there. Well, let's get some of the statistics on screen, and this is where we should start. This is a key part of one of the documents we looked at, and what they've done is divided the population up into younger, more deprived, younger, less deprived, older, more deprived, older, less deprived, and they are looking at the cost of individuals to the NHS. And in the documentation, it very clearly shows that older, more deprived people are regarded as being a huge burden on the NHS, but not to worry, Mike, because they've got an optimal pathway for these elderly people. The optimal pathway doesn't seem to really be using the word care. So what's it about? Well, this is part of the key document. It's called the right care scenario, the variation between standard and optimal pathways. There's nothing very cuddly about this. It's very clinical. They set up a scenario of an 84-year-old lady called Janet. She has a fall. Somebody calls the NHS, and the ambulance arrives. She's taken to hospital. But as time goes on, things happen. She has another fall. She goes home where she has a further fall. And eventually she passes away at age 85. Well, what they do is they cost the whole thing. So we've got the standard cost in one column, 35,274. And then if we apply optimal care, we can reduce that cost apparently to 19,386. Very precise stuff, this, Mike.
I see the care home costs go from 2,727 to zero.
Yes.
Because you don't need a care home if somebody's dead.
Well, there's a lot of interesting questions, but let's remember this is all statistics, very cold, callous, sort of profit center analysis of elderly people. Well, we're going to say that the UK column was alone in warning people what was coming here. This was our article, Towards 1 Million Change Agents. And what were we saying was going on? They were going to destroy the NHS from the inside. And how do you do that? You need to disrupt it. You need to kickstart the change agenda. Then you're going to select and reframe the NHS leaders. These are the change agents that they're talking about. You're going to refocus on money, cost, profit, and privatization. You're going to identify the expensive patients. And of course, you're going to then unleash the care pathways. And a key part of our Penzance talk was, of course, focusing on the fact that we've now got irrefutable evidence that elderly people are being killed off in the care homes. It starts with dehydration, and this starts to produce problems which are often similar to dementia. So it starts with dehydration, then those symptoms come in, then the drugs are prescribed, and after the cocktail of drugs, you can withdraw food because that's now regarded as a treatment that can be withdrawn. So we are going to really be digging into this subject, but it's quite clear that there is now a program to eradicate these expensive, deprived older people.
Something that was mentioned on Friday on the BBC, Brian, was somebody describing their experience of NHS cancer care, where they had the person concerned was a doctor. They'd gone in for an assessment on their own health. And the first thing that I wasn't aware of, if you were getting a scan for cancer or something like that, that the person doing the scan was not allowed to show you the scan as it happens. You were not allowed to see the raw scan at the time. Now, it happened that this doctor knew the person that was carrying out the scan, and so the person broke the rules and let the doctor see the scan. When he then went for his follow-up meeting to discuss the results of the scan, he was shown a scan which was different to the scan that he had seen. He had seen a scan at the time which showed that he was clear of cancer. When he went to the follow-up meeting, he was shown a scan which showed that he had cancer. So the question then is, how does that happen? And what are the implications of that are huge, because if you're being misdiagnosed as having a disease that you don't have, you're then being put onto chemotherapy or some other pretty horrendous treatment like that. The health results of that are really nasty.
Indeed, and this was one of the very subjects, and Mike and I only had this conversation before the news, but on Saturday, Patrick Quanton in Penzance was talking about this exactly this thing of results being fiddled, presumably to allow people to make profit out of treatment and drugs.
Part of the care, it's not a care pathway, part of the pathway, perhaps?
The pathway.
Yes. Right. Okay, so modern slavery, Priti Patel back in the news again, and she's saying the international response to modern slavery, human trafficking and child exploitation has been far too slow, which is why I'm making eradicating these crimes a priority for my department. Now, of course, she's International Development Secretary. Now, this is all to mark National Day Against Slavery, which is on October the 18th. And she wants to see, as I say, this increase in support. But it's all about foreign support. So, but $150 million, $150 billion a year is the money that is made out of modern slavery. That's the assessment. And the government is putting £33 million into tackling it. Yeah. This is like the war on drugs. That'll have no effect whatsoever.
Well, it's just media hype, isn't it? It's policy being pushed out, not because it's real policy, but because it's got a propaganda element to keep people's minds off the fact they can't even stop slavery in Britain.
Right, exactly. We'll come on to that. So if we can put Priti back up a second. She says that as a member of the first ever government task force on modern slavery, I will replicate the leadership already shown in the UK to work with international governments, multilaterals, civil society, religious leaders and businesses to stamp out modern slavery. Yes. End violence against children. This is the government's website on this. Child labour, both forced and not forced, involves 170 million children around the world. And so to improve the global response, the international She said that her new role as a founding member of the Global Partnership to End Violence Against Children, they're going to mobilize governments, mobilize multilateral civil society, the usual crowd that she's already mentioned. And they have provided an anti-slavery commissioner to help. And this is their report for 2015-2016. Well, what can we say about it? They're basically going to do not very much. This is the greatest human rights issue of our time, according to Theresa May. And this report says that achievements delivered under each of the priority areas identified in the strategic plan of 2015 to 2017. He's now halfway through them. This is the commissioner. And although significant progress has been made in the fight against modern slavery, with more victims identified and more criminals convicted, there's still much to be done to ensure best practice across all agencies. Well, yes, like, for example, keeping track of Syrian refugee children that come into this country. If they can't even do that, how do they expect to manage this problem globally? Because
this is not real policy, Mike.
Right.
This is theatre in order to keep people's attention away from what's really happening in the country. Where's the slavery? It's us. This is the thing that they're trying to keep people's attention away from. But I'm glad to see that Britain's new Prime Minister, Theresa May, is going to help that anti-slavery commission, because we can give you a classic example of how good her work is. Let's bring up Melanie Shaw. And we're getting some really interesting information about Melanie. The first thing I can tell you is that she's now into 21 weeks in prison. She still has no idea why she is in prison. She's not on remand, she's not convicted, but she's spending 23 hours a day in a 5-foot by 10-foot cell. 5-foot by 10-foot cell. She's been put there by Theresa May, who of course was the Home Secretary that was leading the whole prosecution system against Melanie Shaw. Melanie Shaw is a child abuse whistleblower. She's in prison, no proper sentencing, no proper representation in a 5-foot by 10-foot cell, 23 hours a day. This is Britain in 2016 in the control of the Conservative government. As I think we've probably shown in our whole news today, what we are really seeing is that we've got the same level of perverted criminal government that's going on in America. Probably no wonder that the Russians are as concerned as they are.
She can't be described as anything other than a political prisoner.
Melanie.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she is. And if we look for key information that Melanie holds that would be very disturbing for the British state, of course, that information is to do with members of Parliament who have been involved with the trafficking and or abuse of children. Melanie knows this, so do a great many other abuse victims, and this is, of course, why she and others had to be utterly silenced. Well, there we go. Pretty heavy stuff, but we need to keep reporting this. And I think we can guess that perhaps MI5 has asked maybe for Russia today to have its finances closed down. Why are we so worried about Russia today? Probably because they are telling more truth than the British Broadcasting Corporation got there in the end, BBC. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing to UK Column. We need your help to keep going, assuming we're not closed down, Mike. That's it for today. Bye-bye.
Bye.